JS, short for Jean-Sébastien. I've been with Forgestic for about 6 months now. Before that, I spent about 8 years working for a health food company as a system administrator and sales and logistics manager. During the last 5 years of that tenure, we actually migrated from NetSuite, a cloud-based ERP system, to SAP Business One. So I was kind of project lead for the whole implementation of SAP Business One. So I've spent about 5 years on the client side, just like you guys, working with SAP Business One. So today we're going to talk quickly about queries. So trying to do a query training in 30 minutes is almost like trying to do an Excel training in 30 minutes. There's only so much we can cover. We could spend days talking about queries, but I'll try to make it as efficient as possible, going through some examples that I think will be useful for everybody. So this presentation is in French, but I'll just do a little bit of quick translation and then we'll get right back into SAP. So what is a query? A query is essentially a data pull or a little saved search or a little mini report. It allows you to pull data from the system based on tables and field names, and you can organize this data essentially in a column and row format similar to Excel so that it can then be either viewed or exported to another system. You can sort, group, and filter the data any which way you like in the query, or pretty much any which way you like. So as we know, we have two platforms for SAP Business One. We have the SQL platform and the HANA platform. The query language to begin with is essentially based on Microsoft SQL. It is slightly different for the HANA application. So if anybody does use HANA, just let me know before the end of this call and I can just explain quickly the small difference in the syntax code for HANA versus SQL. So the query generator that we're going to look at is a little bit of a tool that can help us build queries at first. So query building is, for lack of a better term, it's code, not click. So you do need to kind of know SQL syntax and code to build your queries. Just like when we work in Excel, sometimes people will use the kind of insert function tool to make it easier to insert a formula as opposed to typing the formula from scratch. The query generator is very similar in the sense that it allows a bit of a click and drag option to build those queries at first. The better you get with it, the less you need it, but definitely it's a great place to start. So one of the first things we're going to do when we start going into queries, all query code and syntax is mostly based on SAP table names and SAP field names. So it's important to enable system information. You just go to view system information. And once you do that, if you hover, such as in the screenshot, over, say, the client code, if I hover over this field, we can see here at the bottom that it says OCRD card code. So the first 4 letters in capital is your table name, and then the rest of the letters are your field name. So for example, that field is part of the OCRD table, and the field is called card code. So the kind of syntax we're going to see when we start working in queries, there's obviously a lot more than this, but these are the basic ones that we'll be covering today. So select, what's the data we want to bring into our query? From which table or tables do we want to pull it from? Where, so any kind of conditions or filtering that we want to apply on the query to return certain results. Group by, this will become relevant when, if and when we start summing some of our fields. Inner join is linking the tables. Those of you that are familiar with Excel, this is not unlike a VLOOKUP, how you're joining your tables. And then finally, order by, which is essentially the same thing as sort in Excel. So this is what the query generator looks like. We'll be taking a look at it very shortly in SAP. Just to give you an overview, on the top left-hand side, we have our 2 tables that are part of this particular query, ORDR and OCRD. We can see that we have ORDR highlighted. Just to the right of that, we have our 2 columns with name and description. The first column, name, is the name as it appears in SAP, so the SAP field name. And then finally, the description. So for the first one, we see that the SAP field name is docnum, and the description is numéro de document. This is in French. If you're in English, it would just say document number. Then to the right of that, we have our 5 rectangles. This is where the query generator kind of helps us out. As we click on, if you have your cursor in the selection field or the select field, as you start clicking on the fields, they will simply be part of the selection. The de, which is from, that's actually all your joining of tables. Typically, you won't need to touch that in the query generator. That's actually the part of the syntax that the query generator will do for us. The ou, which is the where clause, you again put your cursor in there and then you can click on fields. So for example, somebody clicked in there and clicked on doc date, and then using the conditions and variables we see to the right, we can insert some conditions into our query. Trier par, that's your sort, and then group by, again, that we're going to be using if we have any kind of sum function. And you can see in the selection rectangle at the top, we do have a sum there for TO doc total. So let's get right into it in SAP. As I was mentioning in the previous training, all the queries we're going to be looking at will be part of the deck that I will send out. So all the code step by step is in there. So we're going to start with a very simple query on business partner master data. So if we look at this customer here, as we were seeing in one of the screenshots, if I hover over the client code, we see that it's called the card code. And let's say I just wanted to build a very simple query with client code and client name. So then we see that the name here is actually called card name. So let's go open up the query generator. First thing we do is we put in the table name we need, which in this case is OCRD. We hit tab, and then from here, our cursor is already in the select. We can double click on card code, double click on card name, execute, and then we get our list of BP codes with the BP name. It's good. Let's say we wanted to add the BP type. So for example, here, customer. So if we hover over this field, we can see that it's called card type. So we have two options. I'm just going to show you how to do it by just adding the code and then using the query generator. So if we come here and using the same syntax, we simply type card type like this, and then we execute. We see here now that we now have our BP type. C is for customer, L is for lead, S is for supplier. Alternatively, we can come back to our query generator and just click on that field and go add execute. So let's add one more field here. Let's add the sales employee. In this case, it's Brad Thompson. So if we hover over this, we see that it's called SLP code. So let's say we wanted to add it with the query generator. The fields appear in kind of an order of importance for SAP. It could become a little tedious to go find SL code here because they're not sorted alphabetically. Not a problem. If we double click on this header, it will sort them alphabetically. We are looking for SLP code. So we simply scroll down until we find that SLP code right here, and then we execute. All right, so this is looking sort of like what we wanted. Here we were expecting to see Brad Thompson, and what it's really doing is actually giving us the sales employee code when what we really want is the name. If we click on this little arrow here, it opens up the table for the sales employees. And as we can see here with my cursor, I'm in this column for the sales employee name, and we can see that it's called SLP name. So essentially, and it's part of the OSLP table. So what we'll need to do is we'll need to join the OSLP table to our OCRD table. You might be wondering why it's returning number 4 for Brad Thompson when here we're seeing a number 5. It's because the lists in SAP typically start with 0. So for example, let's say we build another really small query just for OSLP, and we execute. We can see here that the sales employee code for Brad Thompson is in fact 4. So let's come back to our query generator. If here I simply OSLP and I go tab, so now I'm able to add any fields I want from the OSLP table, and we wanted our SLP name. So then if I go execute, all right, this is looking a lot better. And then also in this case, we don't really need the code anymore. So we can just get rid of that guy and then execute, and then we have what we want. Let's do a little bit of filtering. Let's assume we only wanted to see our customers. So this filter up here is going to be available in all queries. So if we just wanted to do a one-time filter, we could simply do BP type equals C. And like that, we get our result. Let's say we wanted to code that. We can simply add a where clause. So where, whoops, TO, card type equals C. You'll notice that I'm putting C in apostrophes. Anytime you're using a value that is not strictly numeric, you do need to put it in apostrophes for SAP to react to it. So if we click execute, we get our query as we wanted. Well, let's say we wanted to do this with the query generator. All we need to do is put our cursor in the where clause, and where card type, we can click on the equal here. And then we go back in here and we just write C. And then boom, there's our query. And again, we could take out the sales employee code if we didn't need it here. So that's our first basic query for business partner master data. Business partner master data is very similar to item master data. So if you need to build a similar query for items, you'd be using a very similar kind of syntax. What we'll do now is we'll start looking at a query for marketing documents. We'll look at invoices first. The table structure for all marketing documents is virtually identical. So whether you're looking at an AR invoice, AP credit, AR credit, AR return, AP goods receipt PO, the table functions are very, very similar. So if we look at this invoice here and we hover, we'll see that the table name is now OINV, but we're already recognizing some of the fields we've already seen. So we have card code, we have card name. If I go down here, we have our SLP code, everything is in OINV. Over here, we have our doc number, so the status, etc. And if we start going into the lines here, we'll see that this is a different table. It's INV1. So this is the structure for all marketing documents. You'll always have one table for header details, in this case OINV, and then one table for our line details, which in this case is INV1. If we use as an example sales orders, the header table would be ORDR, and by the same token, the line details table would be RDR1. So let's build a simple query with invoices. What we'll want here is our card code, our card name, the doc num, the doc date, and the document total. Let me just grab my notes here. Yep. So we don't really see anything for document total here. They usually are in order of importance. So if we start scrolling down, we see a doc total right here. So this is probably what we want. If we want to be sure, we can try hovering over this field here, the total, but we see that it's not really giving us that field name. This will happen sometimes for some fields. If you do want to be 100% certain, what you could do is simply run a query for all of OINV. If we don't put anything in the select up here, it'll return every single field from OINV, and we're just going to put a simple condition, return everything for OINV for this document. If I go execute, so right now I'm getting every single field, and we're looking for that total field, which was 1,220 and 40. So here it is. Yes, it is called document total. And then if I hover over this field, we can see at the bottom left that it is in fact called doc total. So if ever you're not 100% sure if you're using the right field, that is a good way of verifying. So if we look at this here, we've got our invoice details with our document totals. Now let's say we want to add some details for the invoice. So yep. Okay, so if we add INV1 to this table, we can now choose any field from the item, from the line details. So I want my item code, I want the quantity, and let's say for this example, we're going to want the price before discount, which is labeled as unit price, the discount percentage, the price after discount, as well as the line total. So obviously, we've already added our item code and quantity. If we hover over those, we can see that's called item code and quantity. Unit price, it's not really giving it to us, and that's the next one we would need. You can always see if there's a description called unit price. In most cases, there will be. So if we scroll down and we sort this by, we see we have our unit price right here. Then I want my discount percentage, and they are giving us that field. The SAP field is disc PRCNT. So sort this by alphabetical order, go back and find our disc PRCNT, which is right here. And then finally, the price after discount. Again, it's not really giving us the field name, but it's called price after discount. So let's go see if we have a price after discount field. We do right here. And I want the line total as well. I've worked on enough queries that I just know this is called line total, but again, you could have just queried the whole table if you weren't 100% sure. And let's look at this now. So there we go. Now we're looking at all our sales now with the line details. If you hold Control and click on any of the headers, it will provide a total at the bottom of the column. So we can see that in this query, we have a total of 13,856 units, and we can do the same thing for our dollars right here. If you double click on any column header, you are sorting by that column header. So for example, here, if I only want to see my discounts, we can see here 450, 10% discount, price after discount is 405. I could do this too with the customer name, sort it, or reverse sort it like this. Now, what if we wanted to add our sales rep to this? Well, we already know that we have our SLP code here, but we don't want to return the code. We want to return the name. We've already experienced with OSLP. So if we add OSLP right here, and we click on SLP name, and we execute, right now we have our sales employee name. So one thing that I do want to point out here, as you can see right now, it joined the OSLP table to OINV. So it will give us the sales rep associated to the invoice. In some cases, you might have a different sales rep associated to the invoice than the sales rep that's currently associated to the BP master. Right now, we're actually pulling the sales rep from the invoice. Should you want to pull the sales rep from the BP master, regardless of who the sales rep on the invoice is, you would first need to join the OCRD table to OINV, and then join the OSLP table to OCRD. If anybody needs a specific example of that, you can let me know after the call, but I just wanted to point that out so there's no confusion. So if we go here again, let's say we wanted to start doing a bit of filtering on this. I can actually leave this up for now. So let's put a date filter where our date that we, already have in there, TO doc date, we're going to say is superior or equal to, let's say the 1st of January 2007. So right now we can see that our first date is 22/01/2006. So with this, it should only return anything that's 2007 or later. And obviously, if we click execute, we can see here that the filter took. We could have added that in the query generator. So if we go back here, we put our cursor in where, we go select our OINV because that's where our doc date is. Doc date, then we can use our conditions here, greater or equal. And then I can do the same thing here, just type the date I need to type. 101, like that. And there we go, we have the same result here. I'm going to show you a little cool function about prompting for date range. So you might be wondering what these variables are here. So if we get rid of this and instead we say equals this variable. So what's going to happen is that SAP is going to prompt us for a date. So then this pulls up every single date in the system that has an invoice. So you can pull any date you want. So for example, I want greater or equal than this date. And I select execute, and then it puts the proper filter in place. What a lot of people will do sometimes is you're actually looking for a specific date range. So what you can do is actually add the same thing again. So doc date, this time we're going to do smaller or equal and a different variable. So now when we're prompted, we can put our start date and end date. I'm just going to put today's date to be simple. And boom, we get our result here. Once you add more than one condition, the only little caveat here is if you don't select anything, it's not going to return any data. I'm just going to take a few seconds here to go kind of fix that, a little trick to make to make this a little more dynamic, so that if somebody does want a date range, they can enter it, and if they don't, they can just leave it blank, and it'll return everything. And again, all this syntax is included in the deck that I'm going to send you guys. Comme ça. Comme ça. And there we go. So right now, if I leave my dates blank, it'll return everything. And if I do put a date selection in there, so say I only want to return, say, between 2010 here and 2014 here, it'll give us this as well, which is great. So now we're looking at invoices essentially we're almost trying to build a mini little sales report. Often what we'll want to do is we'll want to look at invoices and credits. So if we already have this query for our invoices, and essentially what we want to do is add credits to it, we can do that very easily. And part of the reason for that is because the field names are virtually identical on all SAP tables. So the only thing we're going to need for now is we're going to need to get our table names for AR credits. We can just close our invoice here and we go look at an AR credit. Well, instead of being OINV, we can see here that it's ORIN. And then if we look at our details, according to the syntax, ORIN, then we're going to have RIN1 for our details here. So if we pull up our query, all we need to do is highlight everything we've done so far, copy it, do a union all, then you paste it. And now what we need to do is just simply change our table names for OINV to ORIN and RINV1 to RIN1, like that. Another thing we'll want to do here is, as you know, SAP returns the amounts for credits as positives. So if you're actually trying to make sense of credits minus invoices, it's a good idea to go put a -1 here in front of the doc total, in front of the quantity, and in front of the line total right here. So if we now go execute this, oops, what happened here? Oh yeah, definitely didn't like that. There we go. And if we scroll here, we'll see that we have our doc totals. And when we get to the bottom here, we have our minuses, which are our credits. Another thing we could do if we're going to export this to Excel, nothing's really telling us right now what's a credit and what's an invoice. Obviously, we know by the minus, but we could add kind of a header to each section. I'll show you this. So we could go like this. I'm going to add the same thing here and just change that to AR credit. And then if we execute this now, we're going to see that we now have an additional column telling us, the actual nature of the document. So that little function I just did there with an as, you can actually do that for any column header. So for example, our date here is showing posting date because it is the posting date in SAP. For whatever reason, you wanted it to just show document date. Right after here, you can just go as document date, like that. And you just need to copy that into your union all as well after the doc date, like that. And if we execute our query, it's now changed the document date. So that completes the first little example we wanted to do for a marketing documents. What I'd like to do now is just introduce you a little bit to a sum function where we're going to use a group by. So we're going to go back to just using invoices. Get rid of this. And if we execute this now, and we wanted to say, look at item sales for one specific customer. So let's say we want to look at customer 23900, and we want to look at their sales for item A0001. So here are their sales. If we wanted an actual sum of quantity and totals for this period, we can just hold Control, click here. We see it's 68 units total for a total in dollars of 40,800. Now, it would be nice, perhaps, to have just one line if all you're really looking for is sales by item. So let's do that. So obviously, if all we want is sales by item, one of the first things we're going to need to do is get rid of all the fields we won't need. So we're not going to need the document type in this case because they're all invoices. We do want our card code and card name. We don't need the document number or the document date or the document total. Get rid of that. We do want our item code. We are going to want the quantity. We don't care about the price before discount, the price after discount, or the discount itself. And we do care about the line total. And we don't need to be bothered with the sales rep for now, so we can take that out. Now that we're taking the sales rep out, we obviously don't need our inner join for the SLP code. So we can take that out as well. Now what we're going to need to do is put a little sum here. So we want the sum of the quantity. Just put little parentheses around it, similar to what you would do in Excel. And then here we want our sum for T1 line total as well. Once you add any sum, just like we saw in one of the first PowerPoint slides, you do need to group by every other field that appears in the query. So we are going to need to group everything by these three fields. So I can simply come here and go group by. So unfortunately, there isn't an easy way to use the query generator for a sum function, so you sort of need to do this manually. So if we go like this, and then I hit execute, and then I come add my same kind of filtering. So I say I just want to see customer C900, and I want to see their sales for item 801 filter. And there we go. I have my single line with 68 and 40,800. We're noticing here that there is no real header for the quantity and the the dollar total. We can easily add that. Once you add a sum, SAP doesn't necessarily know what you want to call it, but just like we saw previously, we can just add as total quantity that, and here we can add as total, just put a dollar sign like that. And there we go. Now another little cool function, if we wanted to sort this, we can see that, by default, SAP kind of sorts it by the customer code descending. Let's say for whatever reason, we wanted to sort it by the customer name. Order by, we have TO, card name, and we go execute. Let's say we wanted to reverse sort it, you just add DESC for descending. Another cool function about the sorting, you can actually also just input the column number. So let's say I wanted to sort this by the total dollars, which is my fifth column. I can actually go just order by 5. That does the trick. And then again, if I want to reverse sort it by that column, just add descending. And then boom, we have the reverse here. So this essentially completes the quick little query examples I wanted to go through with you guys. I'll show you a couple more slides here, just some useful functions that you may appreciate. So here are some useful date functions that you can use. So if you're looking to get today's date in any kind of query, it's get date parentheses, close parentheses. If you want to get the current date minus a day, plus 1 day, plus 1 month, plus 1 year, etc., this is the syntax you would use. In some cases, sometimes you want to run a report every day for sales from the previous day. So this is where this kind of syntax would come in useful. It can get a little bit trickier, but you can even exclude weekends from this and then exclude holidays. So you could even get to a point where you say, give me the sales from the last 6 business days. And if there was holidays, it's going to exclude it, etc. Now, one last thing I wanted to mention is obviously any query results can be exported. Sometimes if it's a small query, we just want to look at it in SAP for information purposes. Sometimes for larger things, we might want to export it to Excel or somewhere else to work with it outside of SAP. So we can either right-click in the corner of the table and do copy table. We can use the copy data function that's at the bottom here, or we can simply export it to Excel. Much older versions of SAP might not have the copy data, but even if it doesn't have copy data, you can always just right-click here. Again, copy table. If I come into Excel here, I can put this right here. Same thing if I go back here and I do copy data, essentially the same thing, like this. And if I want to export it to Excel, I simply click on my Excel icon up here, and then I can name it whatever I want and save it as any Excel format. So that is all I had for you guys today. Like I said, just going quickly here, all the code that we went through is all in these examples, and it kind of explains all the things that we've added and taken out, etc. So does anybody have any questions, or anybody HANA users that would like to see what the difference in syntax is for HANA?
Yeah, and if you're muted, you can just unmute it. I had muted everybody for the recording, so go ahead.
I just saw Sojag, you asked a question about you can't see the field name, so you need to go to View System Information right here. So for example, if I minimize this here and I open up a sales order, I am seeing that it's ORDR card code. However, if I take off my system information, I don't see it anymore. So you do need to go to View System Information. You're very welcome.
Jean-Sébastien?
JS is absolutely fine.
Hi, it's Martin.
Hi. Hey, how's it going?
Okay, good, thank you. Are there any fields where that don't have a not a table, but the the little thing on the bottom of the system information? Like some of the numbers I've seen just
you're
a formula or something.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and we kind of touched on that a bit in the first few slides. So in fact, document total and tax are two of them. So right now you see I'm hovering over the sales manager, and we can see that it's SLP code. Up here we can see that it's card code. And to your point, if I hover over this tax field, I'm not really seeing what the name is, and if I hover over this total field, I'm not seeing what it is. That will happen once in a while. What you do in that case is, so we see that this is sales order 1. So we go run a query on ORDR, and we say return all fields, so leave the select part blank, and just isolate the document you're looking for. So we're document equals 1. And then the values we'll be looking for is tax is 1755 and total is 15255. So we execute like this, and we just start scrolling along here. And then we see, oh, there's that 1755. And if I hover over that field, we can see that it's called VAT sum. And then if I go and find my 15255 right here, we can see that this one is called doc total. So if I were to go here and then sort my fields, we can see that we have our VAT sum that will be down here. And we have our doc total that'll be up there. So yes, in some cases, you won't necessarily find the field just by hovering over it. After a while, you get to know what the field names are for VAT sum and total and whatnot. But yes, you're absolutely right. Sometimes you need to do a little bit of digging to find that field name.
Okay, so there is that's like a workaround. Okay,
it's a workaround, and I'll be honest, the more you start building queries, the more often you'll find yourself, all right, it's the first time you're building a query on credits, just to get all your fields, you'll just run a whole query on the entire credit table for one document, so you can kind of see what field is what based on what I'm seeing. Yep.
Right. Okay, so what you're also saying then is every field, there is a way to get the actual field name.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, cool.
Yep. And, in the case where we went here too, and I was looking, when we went to the total tax one here that shows 1755, yes, if I hover over it, I see that its SAP field name is called VAT sum, but this total tax header is also useful because I can just go in here and sort it by description and then go find total tax. So sometimes you don't really need the actual SAP field name. So in case it's here, you can see that the description is total tax and the name is VAT sum.
Got it. Is there a central place that has all the names and descriptions for maybe all the tables or most used tables?
Yes, the internet.
Or okay, yeah. Well, if you have that list though, JS, maybe you can send it to me as well with the.
I certainly will, but if you just Google SAP B1 tables, the first thing that comes up is a lovely gentleman here that's prepared a very, very thorough list of all of them. So, if you're here and you're looking up invoice, well, you'll see here, and you might need to do AR invoice, but. Well, you would need to scroll down, but yeah, so there is a way to see it, absolutely.
Okay, good.
Typically, the tables aren't really hidden. So, like we were seeing here, this total field doesn't really have a name unless you go looking for it. But you should always be able to find the table names somewhere in the table. I've never come across a table that's like, mysterious like that. Sometimes you just need to know the table name to pull it, but yeah, essentially the table name shouldn't be too hard to figure out. I will include the link for all the SAP tables in the deck, but ultimately the field names you might have to go looking for, but the tables should be a little more straightforward.
Okay, and once you have, this concerns, I guess, editing and changing a query. If you have a query and then you've saved it, you've used it, and then now you want to take that query and edit it a little bit, and then save it under kind of like a different name, kind of like an Excel sheet. You change it and save it under a different name.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that an easy thing to do here?
Super easy thing to do. So once you build, so all the queries we were building, right? So this query generator, so let's just say we go ORDR, and let's say we just wanted a doc num and doc type execute. If I want to save this query, I just go save, and then you have categories. You can add as many categories as you want. So I'm going to put this under general and call it test. Save like this, and if I cancel now to view this query that I just saved, I can open up the query manager here, or you can go again, same spot, tools, queries, query manager. If I go into general, I have test here. Let's just say for whatever reason, I also wanted to save this, but without the doc type. No problem. I just go save as general, and I can go test, and I can just test V2 or whatever. And then same thing if you need to remove some queries, if now I wanted to remove one of these, you just click on it and remove.
Okay, so once you call it up again, you can use the query generator again.
The query manager,
Query manager,
And now we see we have my tests, and then the test 2 that I created here, Now, I'm again not sure everybody's interested in this, but you can even grant access to different queries. So let's say you have a finance department, you've got some confidential info or info you don't want other employees seeing. You can create a query category for finance, and then under general authorizations, you can say only people with this authorization are allowed to run those queries.
Ça, c'est... On va dire que j'ai un peu de... Je pourrais, dans le fond, d'introduire. Je ne sais pas exactement, mais moi, c'est quoi les... C'est ça.
Again, is anybody on the call using HANA? Did anybody want to see... Again, not sure if anybody is using HANA, but if you are, I would show you just a little main difference in the code. Nope. Okay.
I don't think we have any HANA users. I'm not sure. I don't think we have any this afternoon.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. Just wanted to make sure.
But so look, well, look if there's no other questions. Thanks for joining, everybody. And if anybody wants copies of this, of the recording, or with the copy of the PowerPoint, just send me a quick email, Tracy@Forgestic, and I'll try to send them out this afternoon. So were there any other questions?
All
right.
Okay, guys.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, and have a lovely weekend.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. Thanks, Jess.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay.